Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like to stand when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fastlane Collective. We've got the whole gang here today. As always, I'm your host, Brianna. We've got Daniela. We've got Yasmin. I am so excited to have all three of us back. Hooray! Snaps, claps. It'll be a good one. Even though there's no F1 racing, obviously, right now, because of our World War 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 might be breaking out at some point. We can't race certain places. We are on a break. So we've got some things to talk about because obviously we've got some big news going on this week. And then we'll get into a topic that we have been seeing pop up all over social media in the F1 fan world. And we wanted to talk about it here and also get your opinions as well. So, but before we jump into all that, Daniela, how are you doing? How are things over in sunny London town?
You know what? You say sunny and it actually is sunny, which I feel like is so rare. Things are good. It's been a bit quiet because obviously there's no Formula One, there's no Formula E. So I've kind of been thrown onto different projects here and there, which has been quite exciting. But yeah, I'm having a really chilled weekend, which is again very needed. But I am missing motorsport. So it is 4 hours of Barcelona this weekend, so I'm going to try and tune into a bit of that. But yeah, aside from that, all is well. Yes, how are you?
I've been okay. I've been off uni at the minute, trying to get all my assignments done. I'm coming to the end of my course and trying to get everything submitted. I've been doing lots of filming. I'm filming like a mini documentary about like female wrestlers here. Very
So
niche.
cool.
It's very random, but I've been doing a lot of that at the minute. And then so I've kind of been out of like motorsport and more into like the wrestling world at the minute, but that does not mean I have not been seeing all the big news topics that we're going to discuss today.
That's so cool. I love that. Like, on the topic actually of women's professional sports, I got to be part of women's sports history last night. I'm season ticket holders for the Boston Fleet, which, if you're not familiar with, is part of the Professional Women's Hockey League here in the United States. There are, I think, 6 or 7 teams all over the U.S. But last night, the Boston Fleet, and we played a Canadian team called the Victoire. They sold out TD Garden, which is amazing. It's over 17,000 seats. TD Garden, if you're unfamiliar with, it's a very famous stadium here in Boston. That's where the Boston Celtics play. That's where the Boston Bruins play. It's where huge concerts go on. It is a big arena. And they sold it out. So it was so cool to be there and like witness women's sports history, witness these girls, these women, not girls. Well, some of them are like really young, honestly. So they're right on the borderline. But watch these women play their sport at the top of their sport in an arena, and not just in a big arena, they sold it out, which is huge. So for anybody that says women's sports doesn't sell tickets, you can shove that right up here. Because it was just amazing. You could tell everyone was just so excited and so passionate. The energy in the stadium was electric. Like, it was amazing. The reffing, on the other hand, we won't get into that. But it was really cool to be a part of like women's sports history and get to witness it. They lost, unfortunately. But it was a tough game. It was a very tough game. They played well. It just was, it was a well-played game by the Victoire, and still fun, though. Still very, very fun. So congrats to the Boston Fleet for selling out TD Garden. So yeah, and it's beautiful and sunny here today, too. So it's sunny all the way around, which honestly doesn't often happen for the three of us where we have this similar weather. So it's kind of crazy. But I feel like the sun breathes new life, you know? You just like, and summer is coming. We're all excited. We're all ready. And since there's no F1, we have plenty of time on our hands to do other things we want to do. So, all right, let's jump into the news. First, to start off, since we're on the women in sports topic, Doriane Pin is reported to be getting her first ever F1 test drive with Mercedes. It'll be a private test. The last woman to have this opportunity or get to do this was Jessica Hawkins, which you might still see her around. She's still working with Aston Martin in some capacities. But it's pretty amazing that we're seeing another woman get a chance to get in an F1 car. Daniela, obviously, we have to kick this to you first because you being the OG W Series fangirl, the OG F1 Academy fangirl, how excited are you, one, to see Doriane get this opportunity, but also just to see this happen in general for another female motorsports driver?
Yeah, I'm just so excited. It's such a great opportunity, and this has come about because of Doriane's simulator work and Mercedes being extremely impressed with what she's been doing in the simulator. So it shows that they really care about her career progression. So I'm excited to see how she does in this test, when the test even is, because we don't actually have any information about the test, just that it's rumored to be happening. But I think it would be a really good stepping point for her and women in general, just be able to see what she can do in an F1 car. And maybe you never know, she could follow on from Susie Wolff and hopefully one day appear in an FP1 session. Susie Wolff was the last female to do that. And I want to say that was in 2014. So it has been over 10 years. So it's like we're all waiting patiently for it. So maybe it could be Doriane, and I'm excited to see what Mercedes think of her in the F1 car.
Yasmin, what do you think this means for the future of women in motorsport, but also specifically the women that are coming through this F1 Academy feeder series? We saw it a bit with Jessica Hawkins kind of getting, F1 Academy being partnered with Aston Martin and then having some more opportunities. And now we're kind of seeing that come to fruition with Doriane. Do you think this is a positive sign? And what do you think this means for the future of these young women who are participating in F1 Academy and coming alongside and teaming up with a team like Mercedes?
It's definitely a huge positive sign. I mean, we've spoken so much throughout our podcast about just like giving these women more of a platform and more of a spotlight, and to see more of her career progression, and for Doriane to have this test, and not just in like a different type of car, but in like an F1 test. Like, oh, I just feel so excited, and I can't wait to hear like the results and even like see footage of it. Hopefully they film it. I would, guys, film it for me. I want to see it. I want to see it.
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
But I think it just gives the up and coming females just I think a bit more hope. Of course, not everyone's gonna just jump in and get an F1 test like that, but it gives them at least kind of motivation to go, I could possibly be able to do this like Doriane or Jessica. So I think it's a positive thing, and hopefully we see just more opportunities given to these women within F1 in different types of motor racing. But so far, I think this is a really positive change.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with both of what you said. It's exciting. It's shows progress that these women aren't just kind of going through the motions with F1 Academy, having these partnerships with these teams, and then once it's done, it's done. It's really been nice to see Mercedes kind of follow through on all of this. Aston Martin has as well with Jessica, but I don't think to the extent in which a lot of us had hoped. I felt like she was more used as like a face, an ambassador, which obviously isn't a bad gig either. It's good to see any women in motorsport in any capacity. Representing a team is also quite the honor as well. But I think Mercedes is doing a really great job of putting their money where their mouth is and making sure if they see that talent within these women and think they can, they're showing great results. Like Daniela, you mentioned her progress in the simulator is what has kind of brought her to this point where they're like, you know what, she's killing it on this thing. Maybe let's put her in a car and see how it goes. So I think it's just a testament to her hard work. I've been following Doriane since her Iron Dame days, which is like not that long ago, but yeah, it's pretty exciting, and happy to see Mercedes doing what they're doing with these female drivers.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on this a little bit more in terms of Mercedes, I think, are not going to go down the same route that Aston Martin did with Jess. I think that they definitely care about Doriane and her progression. And it's not just having her as an ambassador role, but also helping her with her development not only for herself, but then also to help the team. Any test that any driver does in any motorsport championship is always going to benefit the team as well as them, because they can take valuable data away from this. So I think that that will be one of the reasons why they've chosen to do a test specifically for her, because it is about her development as well. I think also with Toto Wolff being married to Susie Wolff, I wonder if she's had a say in this. Now, I'm not trying to say that there's like any conflict of interest there, because I don't think there is. I just think that maybe Toto is aware of the challenges that these women face through being married to Susie, and wants to then give an opportunity to a woman who very much deserves it. Having won the F1 Academy Championship, not knowing what her next steps were going to be, I think this is a great avenue for her. This weekend, she is racing in the 4 hours of Barcelona for European Le Mans Series, which also Jamie Chadwick is in. So I think that, you know, there is a lot of emphasis at the moment in getting women into other championships, such as endurance racing or Formula E. So I think the fact that Mercedes are recognising this, that F1 needs to kind of take a step up if they want to encourage women into this sport. And I think that's what they're doing. They're having these conversations, and obviously it helps with Susie's involvement with Toto to get Doriane into this position. And I'm not saying that Doriane hasn't earned it, like she absolutely has, but you also have to be having these conversations with other people to get yourself into that place. It's all about networking. Every industry's like that, as we all know. So I think that we can expect good things from Doriane's relationship with Mercedes going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, Daniela. Not saying that there's like a bias there because Toto is married to Susie, but Toto has a very different experience, and probably way more of an eye-opening experience through being married to Susie and being with her for so long. He's watched his own wife go through this process, where a lot of these other team principals, or even people just straight up involved in Formula One itself, have not had that close of a personal relationship with a female that has tried to make it to the top and been successful at getting close. So I just think that Toto probably has like more of a better understanding around, what do we need to do. And he's very lucky to have Susie Wolff to like talk to and bounce ideas off of, honestly. Just kind of have it as a resource to be like, hey, when you were trying to do this when you were in the sport, what were your biggest challenges? You know, he has that direct line to a woman who's done it, which I think is partially the reason you're seeing Mercedes kind of take a different approach, like you mentioned, Daniela, from what Aston Martin did or some of these other teams like Alpine. It's because they have that different insight into what's going on, because Susie Wolff has been such a great resource. So I think it's really cool that kind of that connection is trickling through and happening. So we're excited to see Doriane. Like you mentioned, she's racing with Jamie Chadwick this weekend. In the Brazil, I'm sorry, what was it? What was she racing in again, Daniela?
The European Le Mans 4 hours of Barcelona.
Thank you. 4 hours of Barcelona. That's what. So that's really exciting to see. And she's had great success in WEC as well in this kind of format. So even more exciting. And just seeing two women in a race on their own, holding their own, which is really, really great. All right, let's move on to the big news of the week, because this bit of news I don't think anyone saw coming, honestly. I was expecting to hear about Max Verstappen retiring before I was going to hear this, but Max Verstappen's engineer, GP, is leaving Red Bull at the end of this year to go to McLaren in 2028. If you're wondering why in 2028, he will most likely have to take a garden leave for 2027 in order to make that transition to McLaren in 2028 to take the role of Chief Racing Officer. Guys, I feel like this shook up the F1 world this weekend. It definitely shook up what I was thinking about what the future could hold for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Yasmin, let's start with you. 1, what was your reaction when you saw this news? And 2, do you think this is any kind of prediction for where Max Verstappen might be or may not be in 2028?
I honestly thought I was just seeing like a late April Fool's like joke on my
Yeah.
Instagram, because I hate when like F1 accounts do this, where like they'll be like, so and so is leaving the sport, and I'm like, whoa, and they're like, oh wait, it's April Fool's Day, and I just thought this was like one of those late posts, and then I actually kept seeing it. I was like, oh, this is real. What the hell? So I was very shocked, because again, there was no inclination that he was thinking of leaving. And I know that he's not in the public eye as much as like the drivers who are interviewed every weekend, and we hear their thoughts and their emotions so much more. Like we've talked about like Max and how frustrated he's been with the season and the regulations and how he doesn't find the sport fun anymore, like other drivers as well. But I think this kind of points in the direction of kind of where Max's head is as well as GP's, because they both have such a strong relationship, them two together. I kind of think of them as one. I couldn't imagine them being separated. And maybe this is just a different direction that GP wants to go in. Like he's been with Max for so long. He wants a different challenge. He wants something new. But this could also kind of hint that maybe Max is looking to retire and looking to have a new challenge. Like again, we've heard him just kind of be frustrated with the sport itself, and want to do something new. So yeah, very shocking. I'm guessing you guys were like the same as me.
Yeah, I was shocked as well to see this, but also to me, this was pretty much confirmation that Max is at least leaving Red Bull, if not Formula One altogether. Daniela, did you think that this is a huge sign, red flag waving, Max Verstappen is making his exit, it's coming soon? Or do you think, again, Red Bull's had a lot of changes in the past year and a half, and maybe GP is just like, you know what, let me get out before the building catches fire so I can have another opportunity with another team? What do you think is really going on over there?
I definitely think that they're both got a similar mindset of like, let's leave before it all gets too much. And they would have, without a doubt, had these conversations between each other, and what their plans were. So I think that this, how I'm viewing it anyway, is that I think this will be Max's final year in F1. I think with, the regulation changes, I think that was a big factor into it. We know that Max is really not happy about these regulation changes. And I think that he's got family now, and his life has changed a lot in the last year. And I think he's kind of ready to take that step back. He's not going to be fighting for the championship this year. And I think he's like, well, this isn't the style of racing I like. Like, what's the point? And then on GP's side, his role with McLaren, I can't remember exactly what his role will be. It's something to be like
chief racing officer is what they've announced right now. Mm-hmm.
I knew it had officer and chief in it, and I couldn't think what the middle word was. Chief racing officer. So that obviously is a bigger step up from being Max's engineer. So I think, he's probably I want to say he's in his 40s, and I think he's probably just looking for a new challenge. If he's been Max's race engineer for a while, he's going to want to look at career development and not kind of get stuck with where he is. So I completely understand why he's taken on this role. But I think they ultimately have, how I'm viewing it, I don't know, because I don't know what conversations they've had, but it seems like this is probably a decision that they came to together and have decided that now is the right time to move, especially in this new era of F1. So if I was to make a bold prediction, I would say that Max will be leaving at the end of this season. And I was already feeling that way, but GP moving has definitely confirmed that for me. I can't remember what your question was, Brian. I won't lie, so I don't know if I answered it.
No. You answered it perfectly.
I just started rambling.
No, it's fine. No, you answered the question, honestly, that I asked, so no worries. It is an interesting move, I think, for me, because it's kind of come out of the blue a bit, tells me that maybe GP knows something the rest of us don't. And knowing Max and the respect he has for GP, I could see Max giving him a heads up. Because obviously Max knows whatever he does in his career will affect GP and how he moves forward if he continues as an engineer, if he wants to do something else. And I think that move here is an interesting one for him, and I think a great one, honestly. I mean, he's been Max's engineer for so long. Like, you can only do one job for so long, and he's accomplished the pinnacle of what he could with his driver, which I think is amazing. And I think when you are an engineer and you kind of have all these boxes you want to tick off as things you want to accomplish in a position, he's pretty much ticked them all off. So I think it's smart that he's moving on to a new team, but also into a bigger role. Obviously, we've seen a lot of other people do this. James Vowles, for example, is a great example of this, of how, engineers can progress their careers. But yeah, I think this is pretty much confirmation, at least for me, that Max will be leaving either at the end of this season or at the end of 2027. It's coming soon. And I listened back to his interview with the BBC. Oh gosh, Max's interview, sorry. I forget what race it was. But you could just hear Max saying, like, I just don't, with these new regulations, it doesn't suit kind of why I'm here, and that's to drive. And he's not speaking negatively about it or complaining, I'd say. Especially in that interview, it sounded like he was just saying, you know what, I don't love this as much as I used to. And I'm trying to will myself into loving it, but it's just not happening. And that's okay. Like, you can fall out of love with certain things when things change. And I think, and he was very vocal saying, like, he's taking all the options into consideration. He doesn't have a decision, but is looking at, what do I really want to do here? And also seeing Max kind of dip his toes into other forms of racing this year already kind of also tells me he's checking out the playing field of like, do I like this? Would I want to do this more often? Obviously, we know he's into sim racing as well, which we know he already loves and is really great at. So yeah, this, I think, was a bit of a shockwave through the F1 world this weekend, something people weren't expecting, and something that left a lot of question marks, I think, above a lot of people's heads, including our own. So we will see. We will see what this means for Max Verstappen's future, and honestly, Red Bull's future at this point. Like, Yasmin, let's get into that really quickly. What do you think this means for Red Bull as a whole? Obviously, with the exiting of Christian Horner, with that new addition of Isaac Hadjar this year, like, where do you think Red Bull's headed?
Red Bull has kind of been like slowly crumbling with the foundations of the team. Like you mentioned, with Christian Horner leaving, Helmut Marko leaving, everyone's kind of just dipping. And we've had like loads of team personnel actually moved to McLaren as well. So this seems to be like a trend. You go from Red Bull to McLaren. But I'm a bit worried. I think as like a fan of, like, I am a fan of Max Verstappen and of Red Bull. And like it kind of concerns me where that team is heading, because it can either continue to just keep going downhill, or they can bring upgrades and kind of figure out these regulations and really be back on top. But again, if Max does retire, I know he hasn't announced his retirement, we're kind of like, he's retiring. But if he does, you've kind of got to start from square one of like, okay, well, who's the number one driver? Who do we base this car around? And I think that's going to be what's going to get Red Bull performance-wise. Like, how are we going to do this without thinking of having Max in mind? And then again, when you're having new team members trying to kind of gauge how the team runs, I think we're going to get into probably more seasons to come of like teething issues, let's just say, for Red Bull. But yeah, it's not looking good right now.
Yeah, like, I don't know if you guys use this term, but we do in the US when it comes to sports teams in particular, when it's like a rebuild. It's like, okay, let's tear everything down and build it back up from scratch. And hopefully when we build it back up, we'll build it stronger, better, and go out and win whatever championship we're trying to. Daniela, does this feel like the beginning of a rebuild for Red Bull?
Absolutely. I think we look at all of the personnel that have left Red Bull in the last couple of years, and those are people who have been there since day one. We're talking Christian Horner, Adrian Newey. Like, these are people who were the fundamentals of Red Bull. And since they have left, and I will say, I do think Christian Horner leaving was the right thing, that it has now meant that Red Bull are pretty much non-existent. Like, they are nowhere. Like, let's be real, they are middle of the pack. They went from being consistently world champions, and now they're middle of the pack. And that just makes me question what their next steps are. And I think rebuild is the right word. I think they need to start from scratch. If they lose Max, they have to start from scratch, because, like, I won't lie, it's a little bit embarrassing if you look at your track record of being world champions to now, you know, kind of just scraping the barrel, to be honest. So if I were them, I'd go away and think about which personnel they would want to have involved with their team. Although I now feel like maybe other people who have possibly thought about a future Red Bull might now be rethinking that. So I'm not sure if they're going to get who they want to get. But I imagine that they're really going to have to look at the talent pool and see who are the best engineers, who are the best team principals, like really assessing who they want to kind of build back up their team. They need to demolish the whole lot and build it brick by brick by brick. Otherwise, they're just going to keep falling down, and it's going to be quite embarrassing for them.
Yeah. RB, rebuild. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. I think this would be a smart time to do a rebuild, honestly. Instead of trying to like patch up the holes, just rebuild. Just call it what it is. Gut the whole thing and build something stronger. And honestly, right now, if I'm as Isaac Hajar, I'm pretty pumped about that, because I could possibly have a team built around me. And he's doing, obviously only 3 races, and his first, wasn't so great, of no fault of his own. But, if he's able to prove himself this season, he could be looking at being a number 1 driver and somebody really involved in building up a team from the bottom up, which could be exciting. It's a long process for sure. It takes dedication. It takes patience, but it could be a great career move for him, which I'm shocked that I'm saying, because us last year was like, no, don't do it, Isaac. Don't go to the second seat. But maybe he just like had a feeling that Max was on his way out, or I don't know, but this could work out really well for Isaac. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I think also GP making this announcement over this week, and McLaren and Red Bull obviously confirming from both sides. This could also start a bit of a silly season when it comes to engineers. Team principals. Like, we've also got the whole Aston Martin situation of it all, which everyone's still question mark what's going on. I think this could possibly be a crazy silly season when it comes to internal team members, which could be exciting. So
I was just going to say, imagine if all of the drivers stayed in the same space, and then all of the team personnel were to just move around, but you just have the same driver lineup.
Exactly.
I'd like to see that.
We won't be talking about drivers moving. We'll be talking about like engineers and mechanics and strategists and team principals. Honestly, I'm here for it. Like, let's change it up, spice it up. Why not? But yeah, that's our news for this week. Obviously, a little bit more time on it spent than normal, just because this GP news was so crazy. We had to get all of our feelings, thoughts, predictions out, because it just brings so many more questions into the mix, as we're on this break and still a ton of the season to go, which is just crazy to think about. Really quick, guys, I want to talk about our sponsor, which I'm so proud to be the owner of, which is Grand Prix Girl. If you didn't know, Grand Prix Girl really started with a simple frustration. It's me and my mom. We've loved F1 for so long, but we couldn't find merchandise made for women, which kind of blew our minds, seeing that women make up now over 43% of the F1 fan base. So we decided to make our own. Yes, that's right. We went into business together and we started making our own F1 merch. The brand is called Grand Prix Girl. Grand Prix Girl offers jewelry in race day style designs exclusively for female F1 fans. We keep you guys top of mind every time we are designing something, and our brand is truly all around female Formula One and motorsports fans. You can shop our best-selling products like our paddock pendant and even our new double stack bracelets that just came out at grandprixgirl.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok as well at Grand Prix Girl, and we hope you come join us over in our community. We are really proud to sponsor this podcast, and we are so proud and honored to bring you merch made for female fans. So again, go check us out at grandprixgirl.com, and back to the podcast. But let's move on to the main topic of this episode, which is honestly a little different for us. We don't often talk about, I don't want to say rumors or trends or things like that, but something that we have been noticing over in the Formula One fandom world, mostly over on social media, is really hearing fans, and specifically female fans, I will say, including myself, I've noticed it. Fans talking about how they're falling out of love with Formula One this year, that their passion and their excitement for it has kind of just seemed to fade. And this is for a myriad of reasons. And it was such an interesting thing that I was seeing so many people talk about, and not just random people. I'm talking about some F1 creators that have a decent following coming out and saying this, which I found surprising. That I actually put out my own TikTok and asked people, like, is this happening to you? Are you feeling like this? Or is it just this small section of TikTok that I found myself in? But in fact, everyone that was commenting, it was fans that are new fans, have only been fans for a couple of years, and fans that have been fans for 20, 30, 40 years, saying that they are falling out of love with the sport. Before we jump into what people are saying that are causing this, I want to ask Daniela and Yasmin both. Are you feeling this way? Are you feeling like you're not as passionate or excited about the sport that you were maybe last year or years ago? Yasmin, I'll start with you. Give me all the feelings. F1 therapy time.
I know, I feel like I'm in a therapy session. It's hard because I kind of feel this mix of like excitement and non-excitement. And what I mean by that is I'm still excited by the new regulations and where it may go, because we're still kind of trying to figure that out. And I know this is probably a reason why a lot of people are kind of falling out of love with F1, but I'm maybe I'm just, holding on to that piece of like excitement. But I'm kind of giving this season like air to breathe and trying like for the FIA to figure out where we can go with these regulations, what needs changed. And I'm just kind of giving it this year just a write-off. But I completely understand why people are feeling this way with the regulations. But Daniela, I want to hear you first. Like, are you falling out of love with it? Because again, you work in the industry, so it's a lot more different than just like a fan perspective.
Have like two mindsets. I'm going to talk on the fan version of me versus the motorsport industry version of me. So fan version, I think I kind of sympathize with everyone. I will put my hands up and say I won't lie. I forgot about the Japanese Grand Prix. I was away for the weekend with some friends, and usually, no matter what, I will wake up at whatever time the Grand Prix is on and I'll watch it. I didn't set my alarm, missed it, but usually I'd wake up and be like, oh my God, I've missed Formula One. None of that. I realised hours later, once I saw on Instagram that Kimi had won the race, that I had missed the Grand Prix, and I felt so ashamed. I was like, as an F1 fan who dedicates a whole life to this, I feel mortified, but also as someone who works in the sport, I feel so ashamed of myself that I missed this. But then I sat back and went, but did I really miss much? And now this is a question that I've been thinking about a lot, because going back to from 2022 to 2024, max dominance, basically. I'm going to keep 2021 separate because that year was crazy and honestly one of the best years of F1 ever. But 22 to 24, we all kind of knew what was going to happen, and that was quite boring. You could miss a race and it really wouldn't matter. And so this year I went into it thinking, okay, we've had the Red Bull dominance. We've seen a little bit of McLaren dominance. what's going to happen in 2026. I went into it thinking we're going to have Mercedes dominance. I don't know why I created this in the off season. I just knew going into the season we were going to have that, but I also thought maybe we were going to have multiple race winners. Things were going to kind of shake itself up a little bit. We didn't know how the regulations were going to work, so I tried to go into it open-minded as a fan. And to an extent I have, but I also we've reached 3 races in and I'm kind of like, I'm not blown away. And this is also coming from someone who is a fan of Formula E and also works on Formula E and has such a great appreciation for electric racing. Even I'm struggling with these new regulations when they are, to an extent, quite similar to what you see in Formula E, even though I think Formula E does it a little bit better, but that's just because they've had years to figure out all of these regulations, and they're fully electric. F1's hybrid, and they're still figuring things out. Now, like Yaz said, I'm trying to go into this with an open mind and give it space to breathe. We all knew this was going to be a teething year, so I feel like we're all being quite quick to make our minds up on these regulations. And yes, we have had 3 races, so we have had some time to kind of figure out if we like it or not. But we're also like, we're not even a third of the way or a quarter of the way through the season. So I feel like we do need to still give it a bit more time. But I'm kind of stepping back and going, right now I'm not a fan of these regulations, but we've got a whole year to see what happens. If we get multiple race winners out of this, I might appreciate them a little bit more. I just think the will-to-will battles are not strong enough, as in it is just based on energy percentage, and you can overtake someone but then not have enough energy to hold them back, so they just get you again. Is that proper racing? I don't feel like it is. Now, someone who works in the industry, this is a really exciting year because of the new regulations. It means we can come up with new VT ideas, we can create new openers, and we can have interesting conversations with drivers and get to hear their thoughts. And it's quite exciting from an editorial standpoint. And also it's exciting for me because I'm getting more involved with the F1 side of things this year. I already worked on Australia. I've picked up a few things now in the off season, and I'm getting to work on more F1 based projects, which obviously, as someone who loves F1, this is a dream come true. So I also think of it in that way of like, I'm very fortunate that I'm getting to be a part of this, and part of the reason that I got brought onto this is because of my knowledge of Formula E and my experience on Formula E, because they are now kind of like interlinking. So as someone who works in the industry, I think I've noticed that other people are feeling the same way. I've noticed people that I work with aren't as excited about it. I'm not as excited. I still am very passionate, as you can probably tell. I'm still doing this podcast every week and I love it. And I still care so much about F1, and it's still like an absolute dream of mine to work on. I just don't necessarily have the same excitement. But then I felt like that at the start of Max's dominance, and then that changed because then I started to look at it in a different way. I was like, oh, actually Max is making history. We're a part of history. Isn't this so exciting? And maybe that is how my opinion will change by the end of the season. Like, we're in this new era of F1. Isn't it so exciting that we're able to kind of make things electric, and we're going to see like what the future is going to look like of motorsport? So I think right now we just need to get through that teething stage. So to an extent, both parts, the fan of me and the producer in me, are both feeling like the same way, in a long-winded way of me explaining how I feel. But I also wanted to touch on a thing that I feel like we need to consider as well, is the break. I think the fact that we have now gone 3 races in and then a massive break, 5 weeks of no racing, I think that's not a great way to start the season, because you haven't fully got everyone invested yet, especially with new regs, and people don't like change. So I think if we'd had Saudi and Bahrain, I think people might be looking at this differently. I think that we need to consider the factor that we haven't got racing, so now people are clocking off before they've even really given it a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because it's obviously weird, and we're not saying we wanted that racing to happen, by the way, with the conditions in the world. we agree with them canceling it. But I also agree with you, Daniela, on the timing of the break, unfortunately, where it's landed in 5 weeks. That's a long time. And also for us over here in the US, those first 3 races all pretty much happened while we were asleep. So in order to fully participate and watch those races live, it took a lot of energy and loss of sleep. So I think American fans are feeling maybe not as excited because of that. Because the first 3 races we couldn't really watch live unless we were up in the middle of the night, which isn't unusual for us, but it's a little tough, especially if you're a working adult. It can be a lot. And then you have this long break. But I think the term that you used, Daniela, teething period, is really a great way to kind of sum up how a lot of people are feeling, and myself as well. Like Yasmin, you said too, you kind of have this like dual, like, I don't know. And I think that's personally because we just haven't had enough racing to fully understand what's going on track, to see how it will play out. And I think too, some of this, like, I'm falling out of love with F1 is coming from a lot of the frustrations around, the drivers voicing their concerns. Like you mentioned, Japan, obviously, all the drivers' concerns came to fruition, and Oliver Behrman with that 50 plus G crash. I think we're seeing a lot of kind of distaste for the sake of making regulations change for more fun, better racing, but putting people in possible danger. Knowingly, I think we're seeing some of that as well. But yeah, the timing, I think, definitely plays a role in it, for sure. I kind of have done, like I said, like my research. I've taken a look at what people are saying online, and I mentioned I put my own post out there. And one of the consistent things that fans of all ages and all, like, fans of many, many years or just new fans have been saying is they've taken the racing out of racing. Yasmin, do you think with these new regs that this kind of rings true? Obviously, we've heard drivers also kind of make this comment that it's not about full out racing anymore. It's about power management. Is this ringing true personally for you? And do you see how maybe for other fans as well, it's starting to feel that way?
Yes, I've actually been having this discussion with my mum. My mum's a huge F1 fan and has been watching F1 since the 90s. So we've got like 2 different perspectives. Of She's got this perspective, like the old style. Oh my God, I'm calling my mum old. It's literally her birthday today. She's going to be raging when she.
Oh my God, happy
Yeah.
birthday, Yasmin's mom! And you are not old, girl. You're fabulous.
I know, 'cause I was like, I'm like, this historic old dinosaur back in the day when F1 first started. Like, this is how it sounds. But when she was growing up watching F1, it was completely different. And then when I was watching F1, it's again different. So we're both from these different kind of eras of F1, and we were both kind of agreeing with my mum more so, being like the racing, the control from the drivers is kind of taken out of it. If you think about it, I think Lando Norris was talking about this, where he kind of had to do an overtake. I think it was overtaking Lewis Hamilton because of his battery, and he didn't really want to do this overtake, but he had kind of had to. And then it's this back and forth of, yes, the overtake happens, but it's not permanent. And some people enjoy that, this back and forth. But then when you kind of look into it, it's more, dictated by the battery and not about, I want to do this tactical move. And I think that's where the main frustration is coming from fans, is that it's more everything is down to the battery, and that there's no like emotion to it. It's not like I'm doing this overtake to actually get up the grid more. But this is kind of, I think, where the frustration is coming from, and is where the love is disappearing for fans. Because yes, you can get annoyed by seeing a dominance, but at least that the driver is making those decisions, if you know what I mean. I think we're in this big grey area. I just don't know how the FIA are going to change this. I think, again, giving this season kind of like air, as I said, to breathe and figure things out is for the best. But then will you lose all the fans by then? It's really difficult. It's really difficult. And then I think a sport as well, kind of goes through periods of being trendy, of being like, oh, we all have to watch this. Again, with Drive to Survive was where everyone, well, the majority of younger fans got into the sport. And now that that's kind of died off and is a bit old now, you kind of have people losing that interest. So I think it's a mixture of things. Definitely the FIA's new regulations, but I think everyone's kind of, I guess, had its trendy time for now.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, Yasmin, because that was going to be my next question to Daniela was, do you think that in maybe, yes, obviously these new regulations, that's what we're hearing being voiced a lot from fans as to why they're not so passionate or excited about Formula One right now as they were 2025, 2024, or in the past as well. But do you also think it's kind of this perfect storm of new regulations and that big group of younger fans that came in through Drive to Survive during COVID kind of losing interest and just naturally kind of going through this trend cycle, if you will?
Yeah, I think part of it also plays into the online social media presence of these drivers. I would say when Drive to Survive was started coming out and around COVID time, drivers were putting a lot more on social media. They were having their own YouTube channels. They were doing more media stuff with their teams and things were trending. And now it feels like the only team really doing that are VCarb. And I think a lot of people get into sports because they get to know the personalities within the sports. And I've had a few comments from people in my life message me being like, do you think the drivers are really boring? Like they don't really have much personality. And to an extent, I kind of see what they mean. And I won't lie, it's hard working with drivers because they really don't want to do the media stuff, which is understandable. Sometimes they can be quite boring people. They don't really want to be there. They don't give you anything. You're trying to like come up with an idea that you can use that is one of their interests. But then often racing drivers' other interest is golf. There's only so much content you can make about a racing driver playing golf. And at this point, it's all been done. So I just feel like part of this is about the personalities. Like, we're missing what we had during like COVID times and like just like pre-COVID and just post-COVID, like this kind of, I'd say like 2018 to 2022 window, I would say was like peak social media personality driven stars essentially. And I feel like now we kind of don't have that as much. It's something I've picked up on this year. Like I remember like McLaren Unboxed. We have seen Ferrari have done this now with Lewis and Charles, but do you remember we had like C Squared? Like we had all of these like social media initiatives, which was so great and so engaging. But I just feel like now they're just not hitting in the same way. The only team that care about the social media side stuff is VCarb because they branded themselves as the Gen Z team.
Yes,
so I feel like all these younger Gen Z viewers are now disengaging because they're like, oh, like these guys aren't actually like giving us much. They're complaining about the regulations. They're bringing the mood down. They're not really giving us the social content we were looking for anymore. And people are just switching off. Now this might be completely controversial from me because I won't lie, I do give out some controversial opinions. So I want to actually hear from you guys if you have thought about this at all, or if I have just come up with another batshit crazy theory that has no legs. Have you thought about this at all, Brianna?
Yeah, it's actually, I have thought about this, but in a bit of a different way, not really around like social content creation. But I think the reason people fell in love with Formula One back in COVID was obviously one, we were all looking for something to be interested in and obsess over because there was nothing to be interested in or obsess over besides germs, and no one wants to obsess over germs. But I think the beauty of Drive to Survive and the very beginnings of Formula One becoming having more access, fans having more access to those drivers and the paddock and the inner workings of the team, was how natural and organic it was. It didn't feel staged. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like, they were reading off a script or being nervous about what they were going to say in front of a camera because it was so new. Nobody knew what to expect, what to do, and it was organic. And I think that's what people loved about it, was you really felt like you were really a fly on the wall. Like what you were seeing was really actually what happened. And I think, for that younger generation, they care about people and who they are as a human being and who they are outside of that car, in addition to the racing. I'm not saying they don't love the racing, but if you look at like advertising and statistics, Gen Z cares about like the people and what they stand for and what they do outside of their car, their sport, and what they do to help the world and the community. So Drive to Survive really gave you that access and that very like behind the scenes feel. And now the drivers are very used to having Netflix around, and their PR teams have gotten very good at teaching them what to do and what not to do in front of a camera when Netflix is there. And yes, they have like changed the way they operate around content. I will agree with you, Danielle. I think we're seeing less of that content being produced from certain teams. I think that's in part of the new regulations. Drivers just don't have the time right now. They're more concerned, obviously, with their job. Makes sense. But, there's still teams that are doing. Ferrari does a bit. McLaren, obviously, like you mentioned. I think Williams has done a good job with like their podcast and stuff like that. Which is interesting, but it does feel a little less intimate, less behind the scenes, and less real. And I think that's more what we're seeing this younger generation react to, not just when it comes to how they're able to have access and formulate relationships with their drivers through a screen, but also that's now starting to kind of play out in the racing. Yasmin, like you mentioned, and what people are complaining about is they've taken the race out of racing. This is artificial. These overtakes are happening because the battery needs to be deployed, and you just know as soon as they go around the next turn and they charge their battery, that person will get by them. It's a little bit more predictable. So I think that's really kind of what we're seeing. Not so much, I personally don't think it's being affected by the amount of content coming out. I think it's the quality of it. And that special behind the scenes feeling.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a word that you used that I just want to kind of question. You used the word artificial. Is racing artificial? Is F1 artificial? With the rise of artificial intelligence, it's starting to breach this question of, is everything that we consume artificial? Nothing feels real anymore. And that's like outside of F1 and inside F1.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Yaz. Do you think F1 is becoming too artificial? That could be because of AI or like because of the new regulations. Is this maybe the deep-rooted problem that F1 doesn't bring that like honest, raw feeling anymore? Everything feels quite like construed and planned out. Like drivers have to be careful of what they say around Netflix and like broadcasters and journalists, and then you've got the racing where they're like not even making proper moves anymore. Is everything just artificial?
I think you've just like captured how I've been thinking and probably what other fans have been thinking. Because again, discussing this with my mom when we were even talking about like, drivers used to like punch each other and stuff. Not that I'm saying that we should do that. Not that I'm saying that we should do that. But just like the like emotion of Formula One just felt so raw. And I think that's getting lost. Like we kind of got that again when Drive to Survive first came out, and it was like new, and we got to see inside the sport a bit more. But like you said, they know that the cameras are there now. We've got kind of cars that are a bit more predetermined at the minute, where you're not really making those decisions. You have to kind of base it on the battery. And I just think like the heart and soul of Formula One has kind of been ripped out at the minute. And yeah, we're kind of in odd times, if you want to say again, with AI, and everyone is, including myself, is more like when I'm online or when I see stuff online, I'm like, is this fake? Is this something that ChatGPT just put out? Is this like what like someone's PR has told the F1 driver to say? So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one. And I think that's why kind of rumors within F1, like even about like the drivers' like personal lives, it seems to get more attention and than like an interview that they've done or even a race that they've done. Like I hear rumors all the time about like different things about drivers cheating on their girlfriends and stuff like this. And then you'll look at like the post and it has way more likes than like a clip from the race, because people want like that drama, which I think is so removed from Formula One at the minute. So that was kind of like a random example, but yeah, we're in this really odd period of Formula One, and I do hope that we get to the other side of it where we're back in like F1's where it should be. But I think we're kind of going to be in this dip, maybe for at least till maybe the end of the season, which is a real shame to say.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't want to go back to the racing where I knew Max Verstappen was going to win everything by 22 seconds. That is not fun for me, and I don't think it was fun for anybody, to be honest with you. We could still appreciate the racing that was going on when we saw it happening, but that wasn't fun racing either to watch. And to be honest with you, F1 just like ripped off the Band-Aid a little too fast. Like they were like, okay, this isn't working, completely new, let's try this whole new hybrid system and the battery and the blah blah blah, and then on top of that, for all American fans, we're gonna change the broadcasting, which by the way, like I think Apple is doing a good job with it. But like I don't like not hearing Crofty. I don't like not hearing like I feel like I'm being left out of like what everybody else is hearing, which is kind of a shame. Not, saying anything bad about the commentators. It's just weird not to hear the OGs from Sky Sports talking, and then like they've just been so ingrained in the sport that now that from F1 fans has been taken away. We don't even hear that commentary at all. I think it was just too many changes and too big of a change too quick. Now, that being said, Daniela, like you mentioned, people don't like change. And the fact that they made multiple changes at once probably didn't help them either. Like, people weren't just dealing with one change, it was dealing with a couple of things going on, like multiple things about the way the cars work, the way the racing works, the broadcast rights for US, like these types of things. Just too much change. But that being said, and I would like to hear both of you, and I'll go to Yasmin. Yasmin, you can kick it to Daniela. But I personally am on the side of like, okay, yeah, like this isn't 100% how I thought it was going to play out. And I'm not a fan of like the dangers that these drivers are being put in knowingly. I think that needs to be addressed 100%. But for me, it's still creating some excitement. Like it's not as predictable. And I think we all need to remember as well, it's only been 3 races. Like I think we need to give it more time. Like you said, Yasmin, give it time to breathe. Give the FIA and the drivers like to figure it out. Like don't think you can judge this status of Formula One on 3 races. So Yasmin and Daniela, my question to you is, do you still have hope for these new regulations and the rest of the season that it will improve and hopefully retain the love that you had for Formula One and the passion at one time?
I think yes, that passion will come back, because I'm with you as well, Brianna. There is moments where I do get excited when I'm watching these new regulations and new cars, but I think it's going to be just like that pendulum that's going to swing again. Like it might take a minute, but we're going to get there. I mean, the FIA, we have this break at the minute, and then we also have the break in the summer, and I think that should be the time the FIA really sits down all together and goes, right, we have the privilege of having this break. What's not working? What is working? What do the fans think? What do the drivers think? And trying to kind of patch things up, so that next year we're not losing more fans, we're not getting more fed up, because there's only so much that a fan base is going to take. So I'm hopeful. I'm going to be remaining optimistic. And just hoping that we kind of get somewhere. I feel like we're going to get to the end of the season and then they're going to be like, oh, we've got it. Everything's working out now. So I think that fans should kind of hold on to the end of the season. And I know that's a lot to ask when you're like, again, everyone works a day job here and has their own lives. But I'm just hoping that we're going to get somewhere again, because the dominance of like Lewis Hamilton, for example, my mum stopped watching F1 for like 10 years and then got back into it again. I know this is a different situation, but fans come and go. So I really do think that we'll get back up there with Formula One, but it might just take some time.
Yeah, I'm thinking like this kind of a similar way to you, yes. I think as well it will depend on what the FIA come to decision after this break, after the crash that Ollie had in Japan. I know that was the FIA were going to take time to go and reflect on that and see what they could do. And I think what ultimately they end up deciding will kind of decide for people whether they stay or go. I think it's going to take time. I just think we have to give it a season. I said the same thing about Lewis at Ferrari last year. Now look at him. I said he needs a season. And I still stand by that. Whenever anything changes, you need a year to adjust. It's not going to happen really quickly. It's not going to happen by one race. I think the summer break will be the big decider of what happens. But I think with the FIA, they're also going to be deciding what happens in future seasons, not just this season. So obviously they can't make massive, drastic changes when we're halfway through a season. So whatever they propose will probably be taken into 2027 and 2028. But as I said earlier, this is a teething period, and I think that we just have to wait it out, unfortunately.
And Yasmin, you're right. Like, I also have to think, like, what other sport makes giant changes like this every couple of years? I don't think there really is any. No sports really do this. So I think it is an uncommon thing for people to witness, and especially for new F1 fans that have come to the sport in the past 8 to 10 years. Like, this is only their second reg change. Possibly if you came in during that COVID era. I agree with you both. Give it some time. Give it some time to work out the kinks. Give it some time for the drivers to learn. I mean, I know we spoke in one of the recent episodes about the drivers really needing to dig in and learn, like, how to drive these cars. They are completely different beasts from what they were used to driving, and it's a different way of driving. And right now we might be seeing a lot of their frustration around trying to learn how to drive these new cars, but you never know. Once they get the hang of it, you might find that they quite enjoy it. I mean, the drivers that have been up at the top, every single end of the race, I've seen them smiling and excited and even verbally saying that was fun. So I don't think these new regs are all bad, is what I'm trying to say. And I agree and think we're all in agreement here that it just needs some time to breathe and work itself out. And I know, like you said, Yasmin, asking a fan base to wait an entire season is a lot to ask. But I think if you are a true fan and you do love this sport, that you will wait and you will see what goes on to make a educated, informed decision. To be honest. And fans will come and go. Like you said, Yasmin, it's a natural way of any sport team. Motorsport is a little different than basketball or football or soccer. Sorry for the football. But yeah, we will see. I just found it so interesting that usually in a regulation change year, there's so much excitement in the air. There's so much unknown. You see people excited, like more excited than normal. So to hear this online, fans who have been fans for a long time, who have like a decent following online, saying they find themselves falling out of love with it, to me, I was like, uh-oh. Is this going to be the beginnings of a fan dip, which I think is completely possible. Like you said, nobody likes change, and when they went and made a lot of changes in one year, and then the timing of this break and everything, it's definitely not helping them out. So will the fan base dip? we'll report back on this maybe toward the end of the year. I'm really curious to see the viewership ratings and how many people are tuning in and what's that stacking up to the past couple of years. I think time will tell, regulations will tell, and the fans will ultimately speak their piece. Anyways, thanks again, guys, for joining us for another episode. We're excited to have all three of us back for this episode as well. Also, if you'd like to share your opinion on if you're falling out of love with Formula One, please tell us. You can go follow us over on social media at the Fastlane Collective on Instagram and TikTok. Drop us a DM, comment on one of our posts, and let us know how you're feeling about the new regulations and if you're finding that your passion is kind of dying out for the sport. But also make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode on Spotify, or you can also watch and listen to the podcast over on YouTube. But until next time, guys, we'll see you in the fast lane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too. Like you said,